Hey friends, this is going to be a short one where we're going to talk about environment variables inside SvelteKit and storing secrets such as API tokens. So let's not waste time and get into it. So if you don't know what are environment variables are variables in your system that describe your environment. So for example, on a Unix-like operating system like Mac and Linux, if you type something like, for example, echo home in your terminal, you can get the environment variable to that, right? And we can even type echo path to get all the paths to the executables. And this is really handy because you don't have to type an entire path to some executable, right? But you can just type one command. For example, if I want to open Visual Studio Code, I can just type code and open something because that's really due to environment variables, which is awesome, right? So environment variables are useful for many different things, like knowing if we're in development or production, or storing API tokens safely. In development, you store environment variables inside a .env file that should also be added to the git ignore. So if we see here, if you're wondering, I'm just in a normal SvelteKit project and I just created a .env file. So inside here, you can store all your secrets. So for example, secret 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's also very useful if you have a lot of environment variables like this. You can make a .env example file because the original .env should never be pushed to GitHub. So you can make a .env example file and it should have placeholders for everything you need to fill in, right? So this should just be like this, and you can type whatever you want here or leave it empty, just so the next person or you in the future knows what they need to add, right? And so we can remove this and we can just continue. So let's talk about exposing environment variables on the client side using Vite, which you're going to see most of the examples for. So SvelteKit uses Vite under the hood, so anything regarding environment variables should be consulted reading the Vite documentation. So if we go to the Vite documentation here, we can see how we can use and import it. So Vite exposes environment variables on the special import meta environment object, and you get some built-in variables that are available in all cases like this. And this is really useful to read as a documentation, and really want to show you this so you can get a grip on this and what does it mean, right? So if we go back here, we can look at an example. Let's just add an example. So you can say Vite, and it's unsecure because this is going to expose on the client, right? Yeah, so we can say secret, and then let's just say inside index svelte, we can remove this. We can say const secret. Remember the documentation we just read? Meta environment, Vite, unsecure secret. Yeah, so we should have access to this, and let's console log this out. And let me just start the development server so I can say pnpm run dev and just type npm if you're using npm, because I'm using pnpm, but it's the same, right? So we can see here in our terminal, because we're logging it right here, we can see the secret is right here, and we should be able to see it in our console as well. So here it is, secret. And yeah, this is really unsecure because this could be leaked to the client, and if someone gets a hold of your secret, then you can be in big trouble, right? So never expose your secrets like this in your components. Only use the import meta environment from Vite in endpoints or other server-side code, because you could leak your secret to the client. And we're going to see how this looks like in a second, because in the next one I'm going to show you how you can safely load environment variables. So also in the SvelteKit FAQ, they suggest to load environment variables using .env, which is really just a package that loads environment variables. So we can go here, and it says Vite uses .env till blah blah blah, and then it's telling you to use environment variables at runtime. You would need to instantiate .env yourself in your server-side code, etc, etc. And we're going to do this now as an example. So yeah, so we're not going to use the Vite one, but let's keep it, right? So we can say secure secret. Also, let me just reiterate, if you're unsure, anything that's prefixed with Vite underscore is going to be available in the client. That's how Vite makes sure to expose only unsafe secrets in the client, right? Because if you have other environment variables that could be sensitive, Vite is just going to ignore them. But in our case, we need to expose our secret somehow. We need to load it, right? But we don't use Vite because it's going to expose it in the client, and we could be in big trouble, just to make sure, right? Understood, right? Okay, yeah. You're nodding your head, right? Okay, so let's add this. And then here we're going to use a simple shadow endpoint, or I guess they're just called endpoints now in Svelte because that's what the default is recommended. So we can say export let message. I can say message. And here I have a simple endpoint that's just going to wait for a secret, and if the secret matches secret, it's going to send a success message. Otherwise, it's going to send us this rude message, you're a failure. How rude, right? So we can go here, and let's use the first one, the .env. So you can say pnpm I .environment and it's going to install it. Let's give it a second, and awesome. So let's just write npm run dev. And then here we can load our environment variables. We can say import .env config. This is also mentioned in the .env configuration because most people are used to like doing something like require .env or config something, if I remember it right, but we're using ECMAScript modules, so this isn't going to work, right? And they have instructions for this there. Yeah, so we can get our secret now, which is awesome. But also remember previously, we can use the Vite import here and it's safe because we're inside an endpoint. So this isn't going to leak to our client. Yeah, so we can say import meta, for example, env Vite unsecure secret. And let me just refresh this. And we can see it's a success because it matches here. But let's say this is banana. And when you make a change here in the environment variable, you need to restart it, and we should see the root message pop up if we start again. Okay, so we can just revert this back, so we can say secret and let this thing error out. Yeah, so let's use the .env. So we can go back, we can just comment this out. So we can say const secret process env secure secret, and this is now going to be saved. So we can say npm run dev, and remember, because we're using this one, right, we can even comment this one out because it's not even used now. So you can say secure secret is secret, and then it should display success, right? So if we go here, it says success, and that's awesome. But this is really awesome, but there's an even easier method to do this. And before I show you that, I just want to tell you that you shouldn't forget that if you're using a hosting service like Vercel, you have to set the secret environment variables in your dashboard. So don't forget about that. Okay, so let me show you the easiest method I use in my projects. So the easiest method is using a package env-cmd that instead of having to do this import like this, you can just use it in your scripts like this. And let me just show you. So I can press Ctrl-C to kill the terminal, and then I can do npm I env-cmd, and then press Ctrl-P in VS Code, open your package.json, and then let me just use multi-cursor. So I'm going to use dev in the build if you want, and in the preview we can say env-cmd. You can just save this and just start your development server. But before we do that, let me just comment this out so you make sure this is working as intended. Actually, not comment this out because we need this. So basically, let me reiterate. So we used and installed env-cmd, and this is going to load our environment variables when we start any of these scripts, and then they're loaded, so we can use process env secure secret, etc. Yes, so let me try that, and if I go here, success, right? And that's really awesome. So let us just test if everything is right. So you can say run build, and then we're going to run the preview, and everything should work fine. Yeah, and that's awesome. And that's how you use secret environment variables in SvelteKit. So yeah, so let's just go to the conclusion before I go. So to summarize, only use Vite to import environment variables you're comfortable being exposed on the client, or use them only inside endpoints or other server-side code. To be safe, use a package such as .env or env-cmd to load the environment variables. Alright, thank you for watching.